Can you make a fiddle out of a 2x4? What's the story on this evil double neck guitar? Why did the Mark Celine only have one string? Hi, I'm Shane Speal, and welcome to Sound Searcher 2. Today we're going to go on a search of a North Carolina cake pan banjo. You heard me right, a banjo made out of a cake pan. This was pulled out of the Appalachian Mountains by John Rice Irwin many years ago and is currently in the Museum of Appalachia down in Clinton, Tennessee. I had a chance to go through the museum earlier this year as I was driving home from the Huntsville Cigar Box Guitar Festival. I am at one of my own personal meccas. On my way home from Huntsville from the Cigar Box Guitar Fest, I stopped off at the Museum of Appalachia near Knoxville, Tennessee. And as you can see behind me, they have a massive collection of musical instruments that were pulled from the hills, from the mountains, from the hollers. And many of these are in the book, Musical Instruments of the Southern Appalachian Mountains. I've been recommending this book for decades. And it's just a small paperback book that you can find on Amazon. But you know what? Instead of me talking, I'm just going to do a little bit of filming. However, one instrument caught my eye. Somebody wanted to make a banjo, and all they had was an old cake pan. And I wondered to myself, does it actually work? So I got myself an antique pie pan and a set of plans for a pie pan banjo from 1923. Let's make one together and let's see if it plays. The cake pan banjo in the Museum of Appalachia was pulled out of Randolph County, North Carolina. Now, I actually own an antique tin can banjo. This one, it was pulled out of South Carolina. Unfortunately, I don't know the builder. I don't know the history of it. It's a fretless banjo neck. You've got the 5th string peg here, the headstock with the back angle, and homemade tuning pegs right there. But it must have played because you can see wear marks on the neck. As I go to make my own cake pan banjo, I'm going to use this as reference. Now, the 1923 plans I have are to use a 2-foot long piece of wood to make the neck. This neck is actually over 28 inches long. As you can see, it goes the whole way through the tin. The 1923 plans call for a neck that's only 3/4 of an inch thick. This one's a lot thicker than that, so I'm going to use this as inspiration because you don't want that neck so thin that it warps over time. So we'll base a lot of the instrument on these plans from 1923, but we'll keep checking back with this antique tin can banjo. Will a tin can banjo make music? Let's find out. Follow along. I took these 1923 plans and I posted them free on my website, cigarboxguitars.com. I've also got notes on the build that I did for this episode. Just go over there. The link is in the description. So let's make a banjo. Basically, all we're going to be doing is making the neck. You make the neck and you shove it through a pie pan. I've actually got a Mrs. Smith's Mellow Rich pie pan, nice and sturdy. This is an antique one. This will be the body. The original plans call for a piece of wood that is 24 inches long by 2 1/4 inches wide by 1 1/8 thick. When I look at these plans closely, it says that the neck is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm kind of thinking that's a little thin, especially when these directions are saying to use white pine. So we're going to tweak them a little bit and see what we can come up with. So the main thing about this whole build is going to be making a neck. We know that the body is going to be a tin can, and like I said, we're going to use a pie pan. And there we go. This is going to be the main part of the project, is creating a neck. We are going to give the headstock a back angle, and it's going to be all one piece going through the pie pan, just like the original here. Check that out. The 5th string has a little nail right there, and they filed it so the string goes right in there. We may use something like that. So here's some mistakes I see with this. The picture shows frets. It says nothing about frets in the description. So these plans call for a white pine neck. There is no way I am going to use white pine on this. I think my historic banjo is poplar, and I could probably go to Lowe's and get some poplar. But let's do this even a little better. You see this? This is mahogany. You know what this used to be? This used to be a coffin. Seriously, there was a local bar that had a coffin make up its bar. It's kind of morbid. I know, it's weird. But yeah, this was pulled out of that bar. Look at that. You could still see the lace from the coffin on this. Friends of mine were in the demolition crew of this bar. They called me up and said, Shane, we just pulled a coffin out of here. Do you want the wood? Of course I said yes. I managed to get the lid and the sides. This is one of the sides. So I'm going to mill this down to the specs of the 1923 article. Okay, I pulled all the screws out, I milled it down, and there it is. 24 inches long, 2 1/4 inches wide, 1 1/8 inch thick. See, there's the lace that came off of it, and you can actually still see the staples. But look at this gorgeous mahogany. Now the scale on a traditional banjo is about 26 1/4 inches. My antique one is about 22 inches. And just remember, the scale length is the length from the nut to where the bridge is. So we know this 1923 set of plans is going to give us a very short banjo. I just did some markings on my blank here. So I marked 12 inches, and I'm only taking off 1/8 of an inch. I want the neck to be 1 inch thick, not 3/4 as the plan calls for. The headstock doesn't need to be very thick. It can be 5/8 of an inch thick. We're going to actually cut this headstock, and then we're going to do a scarf joint. That scarf joint will give it the back angle. I'm roughing out the neck right now. I've got the headstock, and I've taken down, according to the measurements, you could see where the 5th string is going to go and a little bit of the neck. The neck is a little more narrow than I wanted it to be. I just messed up on my table saw, and it's making me realize one thing. The one tool I really need in here is a bandsaw. I could be cutting this down so much quicker if I had a bandsaw. I'm using a table saw, I'm using my spindle sander, so many different things to take the place of what a good bandsaw would do. But hey, you make do. I also used my miter saw to cut the headstock at a 15-degree angle. What I'm going to do is take this, flip it around here, and there is my back angle for my headstock. It's called a scarf joint. 15-degree cut, boom, flip over, glue. To round the back of my neck, I'm going to use this, a Shinto rasp. Get a nice shape to it so it feels good with the hand. And this is actually one of the more enjoyable things to do when you're making these instruments, is to slowly shape this neck into where it needs to be. Let it fit right into your hands. One thing I forgot to do, in the plans it calls to come down 1/2 inch so that it fits into the pie pan. 1/2 inch down. Well, I took it 1/2 inch down to fit in the pie pan, but I also brought it in 1/2 inch this way and 1/2 inch this way, so that I just have this piece going right through here. This is similar to the antique historic one I have. Am I allowed to admit that sometimes I feel completely over my head in ability to do this stuff? For 3 decades, I've taught people how to make a cigar box guitar with just a stick through a box. All of these extra measurements are totally different than what I'm used to. And it's showing me what abilities I need to hone and basically what tools I need to buy. So I'm going to clean things up, do some sanding. I'm going to take my Dremel and Dremel sanding wheel, clean some of that up, get rid of all these marks, and then finally glue this scarf joint together on the headstock. That came out pretty good. I used my Dremel Just use the sander to kind of clean things up. I always use this arm. This is nice. I keep the Dremel hanging up here, and then if I need it, I turn it on, and I can use it like a pen. So I'm not using the big motor in my hand. It's just a nice little addition. Now I'm just going to do some hand sanding. We're going to go from 80 up to probably 240. The neck's still got a ways to go. I'm still sanding it. However, I am going to cut the hole out for the pie pan so that I can figure out how the neck's going to fit through it and figure out what the actual scale length is going to be. Because once this is done being sanded and prepped, I'm actually going to be cutting and putting frets in. Okay, it's most of the way there, and what this is actually showing me is that I need to bring this wood down here. Looks like I could take a little out in here. I've got the headstock scarf all glued up, and you know, I realized I made a mistake. Scarves should be down here on the neck, and I did the scarf here on the headstock. I don't know if that'll make it weaker. I may have to put a couple dowel rods in there to strengthen it up. If you're a guitarist and want to get a banjo sound, but you don't want to learn how to play a banjo, if you want the cheater's way to do it, get one of these. This is a 6-string banjo. All it is a guitar neck on a banjo body. The neck is a little bit longer than a usual guitar to get the banjo sound. But let me tell you something. If you've ever played a 6-string banjo, you'll notice that it truly does not sound like a banjo. The reason is the two low strings, the E and the A string, are low acoustic guitar strings. Well, those strings don't occur on a regular banjo. And so they're low and they're muddy and it just doesn't sound right. So what I did with this was I took the E and the A strings off and I replaced them with a high E on the low and the B string here on the A string here. So it's still E, A, D, G, B, E. However, the first two strings are an octave up. It's kind of like Nashville tuning. I'm not expecting to play the Grand Ole Opry. I just like playing this stuff at home, and I play this banjo in church to add to the modern worship music. If you play guitar, cheat. Get a 6-string banjo. These things are cheap. And then sit on your porch and play and scare the neighbors. The glue's dry on the headstock, but I did something when you guys weren't watching. The scarf joint just wasn't the greatest, and I had a feeling it was going to be kind of weak. So I cut a piece of the coffin wood, like about an 1/8 inch thick, and I put it on top of here and glued that as well. So I'm going to trim that off. It's going to be somewhere between 17 and 18 inches for the scale length. Luckily, I have the complete set of CB Gitty fretting templates, and there's a 17-inch one. Whenever I fit the neck into the pie pan, okay, and make sure this comes to about the end there. Push that in. If I take it from that edge, 17 inches will give me basically close to the middle. I think that's going to work. So now I need to clean up this monstrosity, do more sanding, and then cut and install the frets into here. I should change the name of this show to Shane Doesn't Know What He's Doing. I've placed the Gitty 17-inch scale fret template on here, and I'm going to mark the frets, but I'm taking a look at the original plans that only have frets to about here, and you could tell the artist didn't know what he was doing. And I'm thinking the 5th string peg should have been at the 5th fret. I think I'm only going to give it like 3, 5, 7, 9 frets. I'm going to go to the 9th fret. So it can be like this. I know that this banjo, I'm only going to be playing in the first position anyway. And much like the Little Joe in the last video, it'll have limited frets, but I think it will be just fine. I'm going to fret this, and what I'm going to do is a 0 fret here, which means where the nut would usually be, I'm going to put fret here. And then behind this, right about here, I'm going to put kind of like a second nut, just to guide the strings. Frets, I have just a little bit left of the narrow, low, nickel silver fret wire from cbgiddy.com. This is the stuff I used on the Little Joe. I've got 3 of these pieces left. Hopefully that's enough. Okay, there's the initial frets going in. Now I'm going to trim these up. I'm going to file them up, make sure that they're nice and level. And after that, I'm going to cut the slot that will be for the string guide. I've gotten all the frets in. I got them nice and filed. They're not sharp. And then I made this little string slot here, and that fits a mini popsicle stick. What I'll do is I will cut this down. I will lower it some. And when I'm ready, I will put string slots for the 4 strings that go here. Then I also got to put that Banjo 5th string tuner on the side here. This is actually a geared one I got at these guys, cbgiddy.com. I've got an 11/32 drill bit in here. I'm going to drill the side for the 5th string. Then I'm going to take a reamer and ream out for that 5th string peg. I've got the neck done. I've drilled out for the tuners. 5th string tuner is there. The frets are in. But before I put some sort of finish on, I'm still trying to figure out which finish. I need to put something on top of the headstock. You know, I've had this branding iron hanging in my shed for many years. It was sold to brand your steaks on the grill. I always thought it would be cool to brand SS on there for Shane Speal. It's even more appropriate now with Sound Searcher. Brand, Meat Torch. Sound Searcher. I was thinking about finishing it with linseed oil or something else, but you know what? I can't wait. I'm just putting on a single coat of polyurethane. It's going to be very thin. Eventually, it's going to wear down if this thing plays. I mean, that's the whole idea. Will a tin pan banjo play? While the polyurethane is drying, here's something else. This is a bullback mandolin made out of thousands of matchsticks. This was found somewhere down in Louisiana, and it was probably made in a prison. There's such an intricate detail to all of this. It has the traditional bullback mandolin soundboard that comes down at the butt end, handmade neck and tuners, and it's fretted. And yes, it does play. Now, a mandolin traditionally has 8 strings. This only had 4. But it kind of makes sense when you're in prison and you don't have the resources. So I add the Matchstick mandolin to my collection that includes a Matchstick violin and a Matchstick acoustic guitar. This one was made in a prison in the UK. I wish this one did play. That neck is just way too warped. My camera wasn't working at this part of the whole build. So let me catch you up to speed. I was taking a look at the banjo and thinking about this whole body and how when it was done, it would be kind of flimsy. I was thinking about putting maybe a resonator on the back, like, here. My friend Chris Pickle gave me this Chevy hubcap, and I was thinking about putting it like this and mounting it so that the sound would come out from it like, you know, a banjo resonator would. I decided against the hubcap and instead wanted to just put a solid wood back on the pie pan. And I had this wood. This is an old record stand. You can see the vertical shelves here that were down here, and the records would go like this. Well, I had a second piece of wood from this, and I cut out a circle for it, and that's what went on the back. Now let's catch you up to where the camera was actually rolling. There used to be closed back banjos that had F-holes on the back. Whether or not they worked great, because I mean it's against your chest, they were cool looking. And I have this. CB Giddy has F-hole templates, and this is actually a Stradivarius template. I just did something. Check it out. Let me see. Here. So I have the wood. It goes on the back, but look what happens. Check that out. That's going to be on the back of this. So it's kind of a surprise thing. Sound holes of Stradivarius F-holes are going to be on the back. This just got so much cooler. I've started to put pieces on the whole banjo. This is a CB Giddy trapeze tailpiece, and it was originally made for a 3-string cigar box guitar, but I drilled out for 2 more strings since this is a 5-string banjo. I've also installed the 5th string tuner and the banjo tuners here. Let me tell you something. I originally was going to use guitar tuners on here, but I realized I had banjo tuners. Now, these aren't just any kind of banjo tuners. These are geared banjo tuners, which is kind of absurd because this is a pie pan banjo, and I'm like using really good tuners on here. But hey, I had them, might as well use them. And then I did one more thing. I added this little decorative thing on the headstock, since this is wood from an old casket, and I showed you in the beginning this lace. I lined the headstock with the casket lace, because why not? So I need to get this strung up. I've got to slot here for where the strings are going to go through. Get it strung up, and can't wait to see how it sounds. Woo! It's time to string this up. Now, I went online and I did a little research. I don't want to put too heavy of a set of strings on this until I test how strong this pie pan's going to be, how strong the neck's going to be. So I went online and looked up light gauge banjo strings. What I'm going to do is I have a whole bunch. In fact, I always have bulk strings here. And I'm going to try to find the closest strings to these gauges. It may not be exact, but it's going to be close. And that'll be my test set. And you know what? I just realized I did not put a little nut here for the 5th string. I need something for that string to ride over it. There we go. I got an old slotted screw. This thing's kind of rusty, but it'll just be the perfect thing. I'm going to set it right here. And there's how I've installed it. The slot of this screw becomes the slot where the string goes over. Let's string it up. Okay, I've been chasing buzzes, and I noticed that the strings were buzzing right behind the 0 fret. This is a mountain banjo kit I got from carverbanjos.com. Looks like he had the same problem. He put the string retainer bar on there to go right behind the 0 fret, and it pushes down the strings. So what I used was this, the string retainer bar from CB Giddy. See this? This is actually one of those string retainers that they use on Floyd Rose locking nuts. Oh, this is beautiful. It's in open D. Once I finally got the buzzes out, once I got the intonation set up, then it started to sing. It's a quiet little instrument, but it's gorgeous. And yes, the sound is coming out of the back as well as the front. It's got tiny holes from the pie pan there. I doubt they're pushing much, but my heart is absolutely pounding. It's something brand new for me. So high of a scale, so tinny of an instrument. What are the songs that need to come out of this? Let's check the legitimacy of these plans. First of all, it says a homemade banjo with a body made from a tin pan. It has an excellent tone, and just as much volume as the manufactured instrument. 1923 Slingerland tenor banjo. 1923 Popular Mechanics tin pan banjo. Definitely doesn't have the same volume. If I were to make a second one, I'd make a much longer neck so that the scale length would be around that 26.25-inch traditional banjo scale. But it works. It works. See, that's what this is all about. As a historian, I think, what did this sound like? Back in the day when they made this, what music were they playing on it? What was this banjo's singing voice? So sometimes I take a look at what they made and make my own version. And if the antique is still in good enough condition, I'll still play it. Which makes me wonder, can we get the biscuit tin playing again? Stay tuned for Sound Searcher 3.